and this quick video is just having a look at the concept of suspension. So we've been looking at pure substances and mixtures, and then and what they are. And we know that a mixture is a combination of two different things that aren't chemically combined. In this case, a suspension is a form of mixture in which the solute is floating around because it's insoluble, so it doesn't actually mix, it doesn't actually dissolve in it. Okay, so a good example of this is flour and water, and you can see on the diagram here, you've got the flour, you add the water, and you can see that the water is sort of a bit milky or dirty, and that's because the flour is floating around in it. Okay, if you leave it sit, however, okay, you'll notice that it starts to clump at the bottom, and the weight starts to fall. Okay, and that's what happened when we did the experiment for soluble or insoluble. You would have noticed that happen with the flour. Okay, and another example of it is muddy water, and also if you look at pools when they start to go a bit greeny, that's because all the miniature little particles are floating around. They're in suspension. Okay. There are two types of suspensions, a colloid and an emulsion. Now, colloid, an example of that is milk, okay, and it's a mixture of liquids and it has tiny particles floating throughout. So milk is actually a colloid and it's got tiny bits floating around, okay, whereas an emulsion is two liquids. And the example, obviously, as you can see there, is water and oil, all right, where they're not mixing, okay. The way you can separate them in the form of a colloid is we do an experiment called curds and whey, and we're going to have a look at that in class. And what happens is we add vinegar to the milk, and what that does is it causes those tiny little particles that are floating around in the water to clump together. And when they do that, they become heavy and they fall. Okay, and they fall to the bottom, and we end up with separating out the curd, which is the thick part, the solid, and the whey, which is the runny part. Now, the same thing happens in a pool. Okay, so when mum or dad, or hopefully you, help them clean the pool, and the pool might have a little bit of a green tinge, you put in a thing called flux, and it gets all those tiny, fine little particles to start clumping together, and they fall to the bottom. All right, and then very carefully, using a vacuum cleaner, you can vacuum that up, and then you have a nice clean pool. All right, so this is just a quick video, as I said, on suspensions. I hope you found this useful.